Hello folks, Darrel Smith from South Dakota again. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience in Chiu, Vietnam during the Vietnam War, uh, and also about the conditions that we lived in over there. I can remember in high school, my coach sent me in on the first football game I'd ever been in. I was expecting something unusual, but when I got in the huddle, it was the same as we had done in practice. So everything was just the same. I was surprised at that. But I had that same feeling the first time I climbed into an airplane for a real combat mission, the first combat mission. Everything was familiar. People and hand signals outside the airplane, inside the airplane, the pre-flight. It was all the same as I've always done. But there's one big difference. I had bombs, live bombs, and they would be shooting back with real bullets. So I'd just like to tell you a little bit about what we went through in order to fly just one mission. And just like at any other squadron, training squadron we were in, and sometime during the afternoon, the flight schedule would be published. We would check that schedule and make ourselves ready for it the next day. The only thing on that particular schedule, only information was is what time the flight was and how many in the flight and their names, so you knew who you were going to fly with the next day. In the briefing, and I worked as a briefing officer once, the briefing officer had studied the secret messages that had come in early in the morning, and they were assigned, those secret messages assigned for that particular flight that I was in, or that the pilot was in, that the mission. And the briefing officer would give all the information he knew about the location and what it was and what kind of enemy fire you could expect over the target. From there, the pilots would go to the ready room, and there was a place where our flight gear would be all stored. And the flight gear for a normal flight would be flight suit, of course, some ankle-high boots, a torso harness, a G-suit, and a helmet, and gloves, racing gloves, thin racing gloves. Torso harness was a piece of equipment, cloth and straps that you put over the torso and over your shoulders and buckle it up tight. And that was, it also had some attach points, and that would be where you would attach to your parachute that was in the seat of the airplane. G-suit is a outfit that is inflatable, and it's wrapped around the bigger muscles or parts of your lower body. And when you start pulling G's, it would inflate to keep the blood from pooling into your legs and away from your brain. Because if you pull too many G's and the blood leaves your brain, you will pass out. Anyway, at that time, we'd get our flight clothes on and the suits on, and the leader of the group would brief us as to how we were going to conduct that particular flight. The frequency we were going to use, the join-up procedures, what kind of weapons would be on our airplane, and where he would do all the talking. One person would do all the talking on the radio, and we were in radio contact all the time. So we would get our engine started, taxi out in single file to the runway, take off individually. The runway was narrow, and it was a aluminum runway, the only room for one aircraft. And then we'd join up after takeoff, and again, the leader would do all the talking. We would head toward the target area. Usually didn't climb too high because it wasn't far away, maybe up to 15,000 feet. On the way, the leader of the flight would be talking to the forward air controller. Forward air controllers were usually airborne. They were a lot of times little single engine prop airplanes. The wing on top was painted white, and so it would stand out so we could find him in the forest. The ground was pretty much green or dark, and we could see that plane very well. So the forward air controller would give instructions all while we're coming toward the target. He would tell us the target altitude, the best run-in heading, what the target was, what kind of fire you could expect to get. So and the whole flight was listening to all this, so we had a pretty good idea of what we to expect when we got to the target. Many times these targets were, from the pattern on the target, you could see the air base, 20 miles away maybe. You could see the air base. So the fight was in their own backyard. So we once at the target, we would separate into single file and attack one airplane at a time. We'd kind of a racetrack pattern. Most of the time we drop only 1 or 2 bombs at each pass, and we run 4 or 5 passes, and to get the target marked for sure, the forward air controller would fire a white smoke rocket into the target area, and then he would get the heck out of there, and we would be ready to come in. The lead would be on the dive already. There was a series of comments we made as we did this racetrack pattern. We would say your aircraft number and that you were in, which means you were diving, and hot. And so it'd be like, if I was number 2 in the flight, it'd be number 2's in hot. And then when I dropped my bombs and pulled off, 2 is off safe. And 3 would be right behind me saying 3's in hot. And then you do over just a rhythm of that over and over again until all the ordnance was delivered. After the last bomb was dropped, we would start to join up, and during that join up, the air traffic controller, the forward air controller, would fly over the target and give us a BDA, a bomb damage assessment, and it'd just be verbal over the radio. On a rare occasion, he would report KBA, killed by air. That's when when you'd see people that had been destroyed by our attack. Usually you didn't hear much of that, because when you started to attack, everybody took cover and stayed there, hoping to be protected from from our attack. So we would fly back to the airfield as a group. If it was visual, you could see the airfield. We'd come fly overhead of the airport and one at a time break off and come around and land individually. If the weather was bad, then one at a time we would fly a radar controlled approach, ground controlled approach back to the runway. And then we'd debrief and get back to work doing our other job, whatever it was, until we checked the flight schedule for the next day. So we did this over and over again, day after day. We would do this. We were flying the A4 Skyhawk, and if you're not familiar with that, just type it into the computer, and it'll come up with all sorts of pictures of that aircraft. We had, on our field, we had 4 squadrons, usually about 20 aircraft per squadron, and there were 25, or maybe a few more pilots for those 20 aircraft. The A4 was a sturdy airplane. It was small. It was about 26 feet from wingtip to wingtip, if I remember correctly. And it was a 1-pilot airplane. It carried the same bomb load, or about the same bomb load, as the B-17 that flew in World War II. It was kind of the workhorse of World War II. And they had 4 engines and a crew of 8 or 10 people to carry the same bomb load that one small airplane could carry when I was there. Just a point of interest, my particular airplane, that type airplane, during the Vietnam War, there were 362 that were lost in combat. So, and the squadron normally had about 20 aircraft. So that's what, 18 squadrons worth of airplanes that were lost. So that's kind of my story today. That's kind of what we did every day to fly a combat mission. Our living conditions were such that when I first got there were tents set up, but there were no floor in the tents. They were just set up in the sand, so, and the cots was in the sand, so we wandered around in the sand. Before I left, we had huts that were built on a platform about 3 feet off of the ground, and they had a metal roof on them, and outdoor toilets. They were tool holders, and they at some time during every once in a while they would be cleaned out by Marines who would hook these barrels that were underneath, pour jet fuel in there, and fire it up. I can't not remember how we washed our clothes. I do not remember washing my clothes, but I also don't remember passing it to someone else to launder them. So, and about once, well, maybe every day, down on the beach, they had a portable shower set up with a canvas wall around it, and so we could wander down there and get a shower about once a day. It was a hot and muggy place. It's I can't describe how uncomfortable it was that with that heat. Anyway, that's my story for today, and I'll be back with you soon. Thank you.